1 minute. This may be the approximate time that a teenage girl waits to find out the results of a pregnancy test, a result that could change her life forever. She may ask herself why she didn't take more measures to prevent this from happening. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Resources or Services, in 2014, there were 24.2 births for every 1,000 girls between the ages of 15 and 19. Before modern day birth control was available to us, many women would end up having a lot of children, which could lead to extreme poverty, and it would lead others to end up having very unsafe back alley abortions, which would lead to many health problems. Margaret Sanger believed that a woman should have more control over her body and when she wanted to have children and how many children she may want to have. Today I'm going to tell you about Margaret, her fight to legalize birth control, and how public speaking played a role in that movement. Margaret was born September 14th of 1879. She was born to a family of 11 children, and they lived in extreme poverty. After she completed grade school, her two sisters did pinch in to help her attend college. Unfortunately, she had to leave that opportunity to come home and care for her mother in her dying days. Partly, Margaret felt that this was largely due to the fact that she had had so many children and multiple miscarriages in her lifetime. Unfortunately, her mother did pass away. After that passing, Margaret did return to school and ended up graduating as a nurse in 1902 from the White Plain Hospital in Westchester, New York. After that, she did end up marrying and having 3 children, and in 1914 found herself in England in order to avoid conviction of charges for publishing items about birth control. So this leads to me to explain to you how she found herself in that situation and her role in the movement to legalize birth control. Margaret was a very big role in the birth control movement during the 1900s. In her time as a nurse, she found herself caring for many women who had resorted to back alley abortions and had led to extreme health problems throughout their lives. This and the early death of her mother led her to have a very strong passion to find a way to legalize birth control for women. At the time, there was very strict laws that prevented people from distributing birth control and even distributing print education materials about birth control. She decided to stay within those laws and started writing articles that would educate girls and women about what they would be going through during puberty and during their health reproductive years. She was greatly disappointed when her articles were banned very shortly into this time period. This upset her and led her to intentionally defy the laws and write a paper of her own called The Woman Rebel. In it, she included information about birth control and how to avoid unwanted births. She found herself with charges against her. She was given 6 weeks to prepare a defense. Instead, she spent that time creating more print publications for people that included a very, very thorough description of different birth control options. It was called Family Limitation. It ended up selling 10 million copies and became a huge resource in the birth control movement of the 1900s. At this time, she did decide to make decided to flee to England to not find herself in jail. While abroad, she studied with many scholars that educated her on different birth control methods and how they had legalized them in those countries. She did return to the U.S. and did end up challenging some of the laws in order to legalize birth control and education of birth control. Public speaking created a huge influence on the continuation of her influence in this movement. Her main topic of her speeches was to educate people about birth control and how to obtain it. She was able to gain trust from many people, which helped her obtain funds in order to move forward with the movement and challenge the laws in Congress to distribute information on birth control. One of her most memorable speeches was in 1925 when she delivered a speech called Children's Era. In it, she used multiple methods. One of them was the repeated method, in which she used unprepared, unwanted things that made people feel negatively about children that were born that maybe people weren't ready for or didn't want to continue having children. She also focused heavily on the child instead of possibly parents with or the situation in which the parents were in. This helped take the focus off of maybe a troubled mother and put it on the innocent child instead. And one of her most common methods used was analogies. And in the particular 1925 Children's Era speech, she used the analogy of a gardener and a parent, and how a gardener will plant their plants and tend to them and love them to have a bountiful harvest. A parent also needs to do the same thing. They need to want to have a child so that they're able to love them, embrace them, and create a well-balanced child. It's weird to think that something that many women do every day, and men in practicing birth control, is something that took a lifetime for Margaret to achieve. Today, 1 million women take the birth control pill. Margaret made it so that the education and availability of birth control is available to us today. She was able to see the legalization of the birth control pill that was able to be distributed to married couples before she died in 1966. So let me leave you with a quote. When motherhood becomes the fruit of a deep yearning, not the result of ignorance or accident, its children will become the foundation of a new race. Margaret.